Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Ryan Bujan, host of Cowtown Movie Classics. And if we're going to do a month long celebration of the greatest martial arts films ever made, or at least some of the most important kung fu films ever made, it certainly would not be complete without one night dedicated to the master himself, the man who changed everything, Bruce Lee. So, our mystery film of the evening is a film from 1972. It's the only film that Bruce Lee ever personally directed. In the United States, I grew up knowing it as Return of the Dragon, but it is The Way of the Dragon from Hong Kong in 1972. Joining us tonight is prolific film historian and Bruce Lee expert, Mr. Frank Jing. How are you doing tonight, Frank?
I'm doing good. How are you? I wouldn't call myself the Bruce Lee's expert. I'm sure
Sure.
there are other people who are more qualified than me, but I
Oh,
mean, I grew up watching Bruce Lee films, so I mean, I do have quite a pretty deep understanding, of his films or knowledge of his,
oh,
background and
sure.
stuff. So, but thank you for inviting me once again.
Oh, of course. No, it's always a pleasure talking with you. And of course, yes, I mean, so many people around the world, we love Bruce Lee, we idolize Bruce Lee, but he's one of those figures in pop culture history. I mean, even beyond film, just pop culture history, where if you're of a certain generation or a certain era, like Elvis Presley or Marilyn Monroe or John Wayne, or even if you've never seen a Bruce Lee film, you know the silhouette, you know the image of Bruce Lee. So obviously, he's a figure of tremendous power. What was Bruce Lee's life and career up to this point? What led to Way of the Dragon?
Well, first, Bruce Lee grew up in. Bruce Lee was born in San Francisco. When his father was traveling and performing, because his father was like a, performer. And then when they went back to Hong Kong. He kind of grew up there. He was a child star, actually. I mean, like, for those who are not familiar with his work, I mean, a lot of people might think that he only done 5 films, but that's not the case. He's actually done over 20 movies as a kid and a teenager in Hong Kong, starring
Hmm.
in all those, Cantonese black and white films, but mostly dramas and some comedies, you know. I mean, most famous being like The Orphan and The Kid, Sai Lo Chang, or like, Chang the Kid. So, but no, he was really kind of like a rather established child actor when he was growing up in Hong Kong in the 50s and early 60s. Then he wanted to try his luck and go to Hollywood. He went to Hollywood. He wanted to get into stardom. So of course and it was on the Green Hornet show playing Kato, and that kind of made him rather popular. And he started in like other stuff like the movie Marlowe with James Gardner, and then he also started training, because he's really trying to exalt his martial arts, to the world. He was in various tournament and competition all over, in both in mostly in San Francisco area and stuff. And so once he kind of made a name for himself in the Green Hornet, he started to want to train Hollywood stars. He's trained like James Coburn, Steve McQueen, Shannon Tate, and then but he wanted to go much further in terms of becoming like a leading man or a known Hollywood quantity. So he was trying to do the Kung Fu series. The Kung Fu series, which of course starred David Carradine, was really kind of his baby. But then when Warner told him, well, we want a we want a white actor to be the main character, he felt really disillusioned, and so he wanted to kind of like he went to Hong Kong. He went to Hong Kong, and he wanted Shaw Brothers to hire him. He went to Shaw Brothers. He met with Lo Wei, the director, who at that time, of course, was like, sorry, he met Run Run Shaw first. He met Run Run Shaw and Lo Wei too, who was kind of like, the biggest. They were both, they're like, I mean, on the Run Run Shaw, of course, the Shaw Brother, head, the head at Shaw Brothers, and Lo Wei was at that time one of the most bankable director,
Hmm.
and he said, I want to be a leading man. And Lois said, "You want to be a leading man? That's impossible. Like nobody knows you, right?" And of course, he was also asking for like $10,000 to be a leading man, which at
Hmm.
that time, of course, is a hell of a lot of money.
Hmm.
And so Run Shaw just said, "No way." So now at the same time, Raymond Chow, who used to be at Shaw Brothers, felt disillusioned with either the pay or the work at Shaw Brothers, and he wanted to try something new. So he kind of broke rank with Shaw Brothers to start his own studio called Golden Harvest. And so he was trying to get a lot of new talent to join him and giving them creative freedom to do whatever they want. So he started recruiting, quite a lot of people from everywhere. I mean, not just Shaw Brothers, but also other places like Angela Mao and Nora Mao. And then so he got Bruce Lee. And Bruce Lee, the first film was The Big Boss. And when they made The Big Boss, which happened to be directed by Lo Wei, because he also got Lo Wei to go over to go to Harvard. So when they first did The Big Boss, um, James Tien, the other guy in the film, was supposed to be the lead actor all the way. But then during the making of The Big Boss, both Gordon Harvest and Lo Wei spotted the potential of Bruce Lee. They felt that, wait a minute, this guy, we have something, we're something here with this guy. And so as the film progresses, Bruce Lee became more and more of the leading man, overshadowing James Tien. And of course, Big Boss was a huge hit. It broke the Hong Kong box office records. And then, of course, that led immediately to Fist of Fury, aka The Chinese Connection, which, of course, is to the Bruce Lee fan, is probably still their favorite film or the most popular film. I mean, many people consider Fist of Fury his best film, but I sort of disagree, and I explain why later.
Sure.
And then after that, Bruce Lee kind of felt restricted by some of the thing that the Lo Wei kind of imposed on him, where because Lo Wei being the this director, of course, one that had total like more or less a total creative control on things. And so after doing Fist of Fury and The Big Boss with Lo Wei, Bruce Lee wanted to change, and so he convinced Raymond Chow to let him direct, write the screenplay, and star in the film that you're about to see, which is Enter the Way of the Dragon.
As I said, it's the only film he was ever credited with as the director. But even if you look at Fist of Fury, even compared to The Big Boss and some of Lo Wei's other films that don't have Bruce Lee, obviously Lo Wei, he was a competent director, but there's some shots in Fist of Fury, especially with the fight choreography, the camera placement. Did Bruce Lee have a lot of input in some of the direction of those early films?
He probably had, although I believe, obviously, he is still, I mean, he's still kind of really under Lo Wei's direction, and of course, and also you have to remember in Fist of Fury, he wasn't the martial arts director. It was Han Yingjie, the renowned martial arts director who, of course, did King Hu's A Touch of Zen, and he was the villain in The Big Boss. He was the final villain in The Big Boss. So Han Yingjie was the main martial choreographer for Fist of Fury. So Bruce Lee might have some input, but I think overall it's still Han Yingjie's direction in terms of the action. And so here, he really kind of wanted more creative control. He wanted to have a say in the fight or who he wants to fight, and you can tell in Way of the Dragon that you see more of Bruce Lee's style here than in Fist of Fury. I feel.
Oh, absolutely. Now, unfortunately, Bruce Lee would only pass away maybe about a year later. So, was he ever on record? Was he ever able to talk about the experience of making this film? Did he ever write about the making of The Way of the Dragon?
Well, probably in some interviews. I mean, yeah. I mean, like you said, this was not only Bruce Lee's only directorial film. This was also his last film released before his death.
That's right.
Because all the subsequent two films, they were released posthumously. He would pass away by the time Enter the Dragon was released, and so this was the last film that was released while he's still alive. And so I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure he talked about it, in interviews and on media and stuff. But I felt this, this was, this was really, even though this film was released in the U.S. after Enter the Dragon, because it was obviously a way to cash in on it, as calling it a sequel too, because in the U.S. it was actually originally titled Return of the Dragon. So it's really not, because it was shot before Enter the Dragon.
It's funny you say that, because I remember when I was a kid and I saw them on VHS. Obviously, I saw Enter the Dragon first. In this one, The Return of the Dragon, I just assumed it was a sequel. But then I watched it, I was like, you could tell, I was like, wait a second, I don't think this quite adds. It was a great movie, but I was like, you could kind of tell, like, okay, maybe that was some misleading marketing with the title.
And also, the irony is the original English title for this film, Way of the Dragon, was Enter the Dragon. But
Oh,
once
wow.
Bruce realized he's going to make a Hollywood film, once realized he's going to do that film with Warner Brothers, he felt that the title Enter the Dragon would be more suitable for his Hollywood debut. So he changed it to Way of the Dragon right before its release. Right before this was released in Hong Kong on December 30th, 1972, he changed it to Way of the Dragon.
Oh, wow. Well, well, that aspect of it certainly worked out. So if you've never seen this movie, this is the film that's probably most famous or iconic for the final showdown between Bruce Lee and a younger up and coming martial artist, Mr. Chuck Norris. Now, how did this collaboration come about? Was Chuck Norris a pupil of Bruce Lee? Is that how he got invited? Like Bob Wall, they were
Chuck
both
Norris,
in this film. Yeah.
yes, the late Bob Wall and Chuck Norris, they were both students of Bruce Lee. And Bruce Lee felt that he wanted to fight uh, someone. He wanted to fight. He felt he wanted to fight a non-Chinese fighter to happen to make the film have a little bit more of an international appeal.
Hmm.
Obviously, the film's main target demographic was still the Hong Kong audiences or the Asia audiences, but
Hmm.
Bruce Lee is already looking ahead. He's already looking ahead. Of course, it's because he also has Hollywood experience with Green Hornet and Marlowe and what have you. And so he felt that well, we need to add a few. We should have some Western fighters here so that this can be more appealing. I mean, it's just like his philosophy of teaching kung fu to non-Chinese.
Hmm.
When he was teaching Jeet Kune Do to people like Karina Abdul-Jabbar, and James Coburn, Norris, and like I said, Sharon Tate, there was quite an uproar within the Chinese community,
Hmm.
both in like Chinatowns and also in Asia. And they were saying, why are you giving out the secrets to the foreign devils, like they usually call them foreign, for Westerners,
Yeah.
foreign devil. And so yeah, and so there was quite there's this movement against him teaching martial arts to non-Chinese students. But of course, Bruce Lee, prevailed, and which led to we have people like Norris and Coburn. They all learn McQueen. They all learn under Bruce Lee. So yeah,
Yeah, and these are certainly iconic moments in this film, and of course, Bob Wall in Enter the Dragon, his role. But you mentioned the international appeal, and that's what I love about this film. Despite mostly being shot in Hong Kong, I love the Rome setting, and I love the backdrop of the Colosseum. Right, you have these two gladiators being pitted against each other head to head.
yeah, definitely. That's the iconic fight between Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee at the Coliseum is definitely a symbolic fight, similar to a gladiator fight to death. I also want to point out a couple of things for those of you who have not seen this film. Um, First is I felt that this film really showed Bruce Lee as himself. I think for those of you who have not seen this film, maybe have seen his other films, you might be surprised by some of the comedy in this film, especially that whole opening sequence. There's this whole opening sequence set at, I'm not going to say where, but the entire
Sure.
opening sequence is like wordless. It's almost like a silent comedy in the style of not just like Charlie Chaplin, but also Jacques Tati, the great French filmmaker, and his
Hmm.
famous film Playtime. That kind of really showcases Bruce's talent as a comedic actor from his child actor days. Remember, because he acted as a kid that in a lot of the comedies and drama, and so I think that was his way of showing, look, I can be this actor, I can do this, I can be a convincing village hick going to this place, like this new place, and the Chinese title, 猛龍過江, literally means furious dragon crosses river, and that's
Hmm.
exactly what this film is. This film is really about one man's journey from Asia, crossing the river, crossing the ocean to another place, and then becoming a dragon there as well. Becoming a kind of man. Also, so this film is really his journey from really like a nobody or like a village hick, fish out of water to this martial arts master at the end of the film. Another thing I want to point out is the cinematography of this film is actually quite lovely. It was shot by a Japanese person called let me get the name right. I don't want to mess up his name.
Sure.
His name is Tadashi Nishimoto. So he's a Japanese cinematographer. He has lensed like about 50 films in his career. And when Bruce Lee made Way of the Dragon, Tadashi-san or Nishimoto-san is actually already retired. But
Hmm.
Bruce convinced you know Nishimoto-san to come out of retirement to shoot this film of him. And of course, they went to Rome because selects. I mean, quite a lot of scenes were shot in Rome. And Nishimoto-san was a big fan of Italian films, specifically the one done by Fellini. And so when you watch this film, notice the cinematography. It might look kind of grainy to you, and the color kind of faded, and that was just his artistic choice. Nishimoto-san deliberately shot it that way to so that so he wanted to look like a Fellini film. He wanted it not to look like a Hong Kong film. He wanted to look like a Italian film, and that is why you see that kind of you have shots where the color is kind of like sepia tone, and then there's some interesting angles, especially there's a scene at night. It's really beautiful. You see how the framing and the coloring is fantastic. And also another thing that you might want to notice is I assume you're showing this the English version, right? The English dialogue version.
That is yet to be seen. I was probably going to show it with subtitles. What would you recommend? Would you recommend the English dub or the subtitle, Cantonese?
Well, I um the only reason no look I'm a pure guy. I mean, like I'm a hardcore Hong Kong
Sure.
fan, so we always prefer the subtitle version. But I
Hmm.
think I will argue in defense for just for this film. I will argue in defense of showing it in English, and the main reason was because Bruce Lee dubbed some of the dialogue himself. Now,
Hmm.
not only did he did his own voice in the English one, I think, but also he dubbed some of the other people's lines in that film. So if you listen to there's a scene in a restaurant where the restaurant staff was being hassled by this group of local gangsters and stuff.
Hmm.
And if you listen to one of the African American, oh, I guess I should say black Italian, it's supposed to be in
Yeah.
Italy. That's Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee was dubbing that guy's voice. And then later on, when John Ben, the late John Ben, who's also in this film, when
Hmm.
he was talking, I think maybe not all of his lines, but some of the lines also dubbed by Bruce Lee. So pay attention to that. If you go to show the English dub version, pay attention to some of the lines spoken by other characters, not Bruce Lee, because some of them are actually dubbed by Bruce Lee. And in fact, there was supposedly some kind of rumor that Bruce Lee actually dubbed all of those other characters' voices. I mean, I really can't be sure, but some lines you can definitely tell, oh, that's Bruce Lee. So,
Yeah. This is interesting. So he dubbed everyone else except his own character. Well, besides the famous yells, the famous Bruce Lee sounds, noises. Um,
mhm.
all right. Well, Frank, thank you so much. We can't wait to watch this film. If you're in the audience, please stick around after the movie so you can hear the rest of our conversation from 1972, directed by Bruce Lee himself, The Way of the Dragon.
Enjoy.
But honestly, every time I watch this film, anytime I watch any of the Bruce Lee films from Golden Harvest, I always feel a little bit melancholy because, especially with this movie, as the director, you see so much potential, so much energy. And this was a young man who was really cut down, perhaps before he even reached his prime. So it makes me so depressed. It's like if this man, as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, if he had gone on to live another 5 years, another 10 years, what other movies could we have seen?
I know, and that last shot always kind of gets me. Especially well, first you have his restaurant pal Akun, the last when he spoke his last lines about you know Tang Long, Bruce Lee's character, getting the respect wherever he goes.
Mhm.
Now it almost sounds like a eulogy, like eulogy. And of course, you see Bruce Lee's character walking into the sunset, cowboy like, So to me, this was his true finale. You know, I
Yeah.
I always felt this was his best film. This is his quintessential Bruce Lee film, not because of the fact. I mean, not only because he directed it, wrote it, and starred in it, but also is like that's him. You seeing Bruce Lee in this film,
Hmm.
and to see him walking into the sunset at the very end, it just is almost like, I've done all I could. This is like the best thing I have done, and now
Hmm.
I'm leaving you. It's almost
Yeah.
like he's leaving this for us. Because again, Enter the Dragon and Game of Death was he didn't have total creative control, but this film he had. So
He knew what he was doing as far as being a storyteller and a filmmaker goes. And I think this movie would be impressive for anyone's directorial debut. It's an incredibly compelling, rewatchable film. I mean, that's why we're here, 52 years later, and we're still talking about it.
yeah, and I've actually heard snippets of Bruce Lee reading the script on
Hmm.
a recording. Yeah, a very diehard Bruce Lee fan played this clip for me, and I could hear Bruce Lee talking. He just reading out his script, line by
Hmm.
line, like you say, scene one, or act one, scene one, like he will announce the title, and he'll say, exterior shot, what have you, and he's just reading it, description, dialogue, everything, and so like. Yeah, you can tell he just put his whole heart into it.
Hmm.
And I also like, yeah, I mean, also of course you have this really kind of a Western theme as well. You have we talk about gladiator fight is almost, I mean, you can look at it kind of like a Western film. Like you
Right.
have new kid, right, the new guy coming to town, the town getting harassed, and so he has to fight for them. And of course, doing this whole course of seeking justice for the town, he also kind of grew as a character. Matured, and of course that whole Colosseum fight is the summation of his growth.
Yeah. Well, like you said, yeah, you have the lone warrior coming into town and then training the villagers. It also reminds me a lot. You say the Western theme, but I also think of course, the Seven Samurai, right? He has to train the guys at the restaurant to get into shape to stand up for themselves against these bullies.
Exactly, even though they didn't really do much.
Yeah, sure.
In the end, they really didn't do that much. Maybe except, of course, Unicorn, his friend Unicorn Chan, who of course Bruce Lee's good friend in real life.
Hmm.
So yeah, but in yeah, I mean, you look at this, like, and also he uses the chance of teaching them kung fu, like especially in the back alley and stuff, to really kind of that was Bruce Lee's way of also kind of like uh, exalting his own philosophy about kung fu.
Hmm.
That's how his way of teach. Like it's almost like a teachable moment for not just his fellow restaurant waiters, but also for the audiences.
Yeah, yeah, and I certainly get that impression. I get that vibe. Now, I'm curious a little bit, if we have a moment, what was the Golden Harvest house style? Because it's incredible to think like uh, you have The Way of the Dragon. Before that, you have Fist of Fury, which, as you say, it's a lot of people's favorite Bruce Lee film. And then his first film, The Big Boss, which is a movie. I mean, these are all three pretty good movies. They're all pretty rewatchable even today. But it's almost incredible to think that these were pumped out in less than a year. So what was that shooting schedule like?
Well, they're just doing back to back to back because again, like Golden Harvest was just flat. They were a fledgling studio. They just started in like what 71, I think. And
Hmm.
so they rapidly need to build up their library to um, not just to convince others so dominate, like the movie circuit, so dominated by Shaw Brothers in decades that look, we're the real deal. We're not your standard independent studio where we'll just make one or two movies and done. No, we
Hmm.
have plans. We have a long-term plan. We're gonna, I mean, we have people like Sammo Hung, Angela Mao. We're gonna nurture them. We're gonna make more movies with them. We're gonna branch out. We're not just gonna do kung fu films. We're gonna do other stuff. We have the budget. We're not like Shaw, where most of the films are shot in the studio, in a sound stage. No, we are willing to go to other countries. I mean, like the Angel Mao film, in like Hapkido and Lady Whirlwind, they were shot in Korea. And then
Hmm.
like this film was shot in Rome, and so Golden Heart was trying to convince people that they're this up and coming studio, and that you should stick with us. You should not abandon us. You should continue to show our films.
Hmm.
And also another main thing was, unlike Shaw Brothers, where everything is kind of overseen by sort of Run Shaw, with this really your typical Hollywood studio like system.
Hmm.
Raymond Chow at Golden Harvest really gave his artists complete creative control. He once he greenlight this movie, he'll let them do whatever they wanted to do. He's not going to intrude upon them and say, "I want this, I want this." No, you make the film, and then we'll show it. And so that's why a lot of the artists at that time were very happy to be working at Golden Harvest because of the creative freedom they have.
Hmm. And I wonder if there was a bitterness. Of course, you're Bruce Lee. You've made a name for yourself in the United States. Everybody watched The Green Hornet. Everyone was familiar with that. But when you go to Golden Harvest, or you go to the Shaw Brothers, and you're rejected, or not necessarily rejected, but you're giving an offer that you feel like it doesn't live up to your worth. I do wonder if Bruce Lee, in partnering with Raymond Chow, if he felt like he has something to prove. It's like, okay, you know what, Shaw Brothers, they're gonna regret not signing me up.
Oh, definitely. No, definitely. That's his way of getting back at Showbrothers. Like, okay, you don't want me? I'll show you, what you. I mean, of course, Showbrothers immediately regretted it once the Big Boss, had such a box office bonanza that, I think it's also possible that Shaw might have tried to lure him back, but no, Bruce was staying with Raymond Chow because of his, Bruce valued loyalty very much, and
Hmm.
so he felt that, what, Raymond Chow gave me a chance. I'm going to stick with him, and
Yeah.
that's why he stayed with Golden Harvest. And also, Raymond said, "You know what? I'm going to get you back to your, I'll fulfill your dream of becoming an international superstar." That's why Raymond was able to get Warner Brothers on board and make Enter the Dragon for Bruce Lee because he wants him to 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 make it big. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the same philosophy that he had eventually for Jackie Chan. They wanted Jackie Chan to be big. They also wanted Jimmy Wong Yu to be big, but Jimmy Wong Yu, for whatever reason, I mean, like, remember, they make films like A Man from Hong Kong and The Queen's Ransom. These, I mean, combining international casts like George Lazenby, which I still feel is a great Bond, by the way. But yeah,
Yeah.
so Golden Harvest think internationally, like globally. Well, Shaw Brothers, even though yes, their films did very well overseas, especially in the U.S. Once you have people buying them and showing them, like, the Five Fingers of Death and stuff. Shaw Brothers, the way Shaw Brothers were making their movie are still pretty much local bound. They're still thinking in terms of the Asia or Hong Kong demographics, the Hong Kong box office, right? I mean, they're
Mhm.
not trying to make the film more appealing to international audiences. They kind of stick with their style until quite much later when, like, say, like King Kong was so successful, they have to make Mighty Peking Man for instance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Were there any points you wanted to address specifically about Way of the Dragon? Because I did have some other questions, but it might like veer off a little bit.
I do want to point out how lovely Nora Mel was. I think
I'm a big fan. She's gorgeous in all of
yeah,
those Bruce Lee films.
Nora Mel is gorgeous. She did a great job here. Um, I think all of the Western characters also did pretty well. Although I think the most jarring aspect for me was knowing that the fight between Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee was actually shot in Hong Kong. If you
Yeah.
notice, the backdrop is more like a painting than an actual costume, and that was because they didn't get the permit.
Right.
They couldn't get a permit to shoot to fight inside. I think the scene where they were standing inside. Remember, before the fight, you have the shots of him and Chuck Norris standing there. I think
Hmm.
that was shot in secret too. They didn't get permission because I don't think they ever got permission to go inside the Coliseum. And so I think they went there on like a Sunday morning, sneak inside, just quickly shot those two, the scenes of them looking at each other and left. So ironically, it was Bruce Lee, the Bruce Exploitation star, who, of course, and after Bruce Lee died, they made a whole bunch of so-called Bruce Exploitation film where they find actors who look like Bruce Lee to play Bruce Lee because there's still such a demand for Bruce Lee movies after his death. And so, ironically, Bruce Lee made a Bruce Exploitation film inside a Coliseum where he fight Huang Zhengli. So like Bruce,
Oh,
so right. So whereas Bruce Lee never got to fight someone at the Coliseum, or no Chuck Norris in the Coliseum, Bruce Lee ended up actually fighting someone in the Coliseum.
yeah. The bad guy from Drunken Master, interestingly enough, or Snake and Eagle Shadow from last week.
Right, right.
Yeah. So that's interesting. And what film is that? Which do you remember the name of that one?
Oh,
That
I
Bruce
couldn't
Lee.
remember right off the bat. I couldn't remember because there's so many Bruce Citation titles.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm sure you can look up online. I'm sure you can find it.
All right.
It's between Bruce Lee and Huang Zhengli, so they fought in the
Well,
Coliseum. Yeah.
I'll look it up. So I'm curious too, what was the timeline? Because again, like Bruce Lee's career, I mean, he basically became literally a superstar overnight between 1972 and 1973. So he completes The Big Boss. Was he immediately starts shooting Game of Death, and then that's
No, no,
interrupted
no,
by
no, no.
oh,
Okay, so Big Boss success, and
sure,
then Fist of Fury,
yeah.
Fist of Fury, and
Oh
then
no,
this.
I'm so sorry. I meant Way of the Dragon. Yes, yes, yes. So Big Boss, Fist of Fury. As soon as he wraps Way of the Dragon, what is he working on next?
He was about to work on Game of Death,
Hmm.
and he started shooting Game of Death. He shot those fight scenes with Kareem and the other people with
Yeah.
And Dan Osanto. But midway through, Warner and Golden Howard said, "We're going to shoot Enter the Dragon." So he said, "Okay, I'll stop Game of Death now. I'll go shoot Enter the Dragon. I'm going to come back. I'll finish Game of Death." But of course, sadly, he never finished it.
Hmm. And so for the people in our audience, of course, we've heard legends, we've heard rumors. He was able to complete Enter the Dragon, right? He shot all of the
Yes,
principal footage, the reshoots.
yes,
He was completely
yes.
done with that.
Right, correct. Enter the Dragon was finished. Yeah.
Yeah. But what was the timeline? So what happened after that? As far as like, what's the official version of that?
The visual, well, after finishing Enter the Dragon, he was about to go back to shoot Game of Death.
Hmm.
But I'm not sure whether he shot additional footage of Game of Death after Enter the Dragon or not. But basically, he passed away. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And this is 1973,
right.
and at this point, Enter the Dragon had not even been released in the United States, and so
Not even Hong Kong. No.
not even Hong Kong. Okay.
Right.
So what was the
Yeah.
reception like? Like knowing Bruce Lee had passed away, what was the reception to Enter the Dragon and Return of the Dragon as we would eventually get it?
You mean Wave of the Dragon or the Warner Brothers film?
Well, I mean both of them, right? Because I'm thinking in terms of like I think
Okay.
of the chronology. So
All
so
right.
Way of the
Sure.
Dragon was released in his lifetime in Hong Kong, but we didn't
Correct.
get it over here until
His death,
afterward.
correct?
Yeah,
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 because Way of the Dragon was released after Enter the Dragon in the U.S. Now, Way of the Dragon was number one at the box office for for that year until Enter the Dragon came out.
yeah. Hmm.
So because this film was released on December 30th, 1972. So like 2 days later is already 1973.
Yeah.
So it made 5.3 million Hong Kong dollars, which is about close to 700,000 US. So that was the highest grossing Hong Kong film at the time until Enter the Dragon. But
Hmm.
uh, Enter the Dragon's box office was not as high in Hong Kong as expected because um, some Hong Kong audience were actually kind of turned off by it. They felt that this was more like a film made for Westerners. They
Right. I could
yeah,
I
yeah,
could see that.
yeah, they felt that the fights are not as good as Bruce Lee's other films. They felt they were shocked that you have such a great character in Bolo, yet they
Hmm.
never fought. You set up such a great character in Bolo, but you don't have Bolo and Bruce Lee fight. What the
Yeah.
hell? And then also I think they felt that the final fight between Han, played by Shaquin, and Bruce Lee, could have been a little bit more physical. And I think it's because of the fact that Shaquin is already kind of like at an advantage. He was in his 60s by then. And
Hmm.
so you can kind of tell some of the moves are done by double. And also the fact that he was, the fight itself is not like something, it's not like a physical fight, not like a
Hmm.
hand to hand. More, there's less of a hand to hand fight than say something that you saw in here in Way of the Dragon. And so that film's reception in Hong Kong wasn't as good as his previous films.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that because no, no, I absolutely get what you're saying. But then Enter the Dragon, when it's released in the United States or worldwide, there are probably whole audiences in the Midwest in the United States who had never seen this type of fight choreography. So I'm sure it blew a lot of people's minds who weren't used to the Hong Kong style of filmmaking.
Oh, definitely. No, no, no. For those of people who have not seen a Hong Kong film, Enter the Dragon is like eye-opening.
Hmm.
I mean, I hate to use another analogy, but it's kind of similar to Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Yeah.
Remember when Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon came out in 2000? People loved it. They said, "Oh my God, look, they fly! They can fly, they can fly. They fight in midair. Well, they can stand on bamboo trees." And like us, we're so jaded. I'm sorry to say, but we're so
Yeah.
jaded by these films. It's like, dude, we've seen these films, like we've been seeing these films for like 20 years or so. Where have you been? But I mean, I understand though. I mean, again, like you said, for those who have not seen this kind of film,
Yeah.
it was an eye opener. It's like, wow, because they never seen it before. I mean, it's just like Star Wars. Nobody's seen a film like Star Wars before, right? So I completely understand. But like you said, for those who are familiar with Bruce Lee's fighting style in like this film or if it's Fury, to see him the way like the fight that you saw in Enter the Dragon was really not as satisfying. Right.
Right.
Yeah, especially like Angela Mao, for instance. You have such a. I mean, look, like Angela Mao. Enter the Dragon made Angela Mao a star for overseas, but you have to remember she was in there for what, a minute, 2 minutes, and
Hmm.
how many moves did she make? She made a few moves. Then you look at Hapkido. Hapkido was made before Enter the Dragon, and there's a shot where she did like what 30 kicks in a single take, single
Yeah.
shot. You don't you know what I'm trying to say? It's like
It was, yeah,
it's
they
not
can't
the
waste time.
same, right? But
Yeah.
then, of course, people love her. People, those people loved her in Enter the Dragon. Well, they haven't seen Hapkido, so they
Yeah.
didn't really know her true potential. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Is like, my feeling is like, if you think she's good in this, you wait till you see her in that, you
Right.
know. And that's kind of like my frustration. But I mean, it's good. It expand the appeal. I mean, like Crouching Tiger really did well for a lot of the Westerners who like explore the wuxia film, wuxia swordplay film. I mean, that's always a good thing. Like, I mean, I guess it would be similar to Godzilla minus one, where people thought, "Wow, this is great. Now I got to watch more of the Japanese Godzilla films."
Yeah.
I should, because then if you're comparing like Godzilla minus one to something like the recent Hollywood Godzilla films. I mean,
It's an art house film compared to the
yeah,
recent.
yeah, yeah. It's art house
Yeah.
film where like if you look at you look at the trailer for Godzilla X King Kong, it's like, wow,
Yeah, I
that's
don't know. I
like
don't know about that one, but I'll
is that
probably go see it. But
right?
yeah.
I mean, come on, come on. We're
Yeah.
Godzilla fan. Of course we're gonna go see it. But it's
Right.
like, is this for kids now? You know what I mean? Like,
Well,
Godzilla and King Kong running together is that for kids?
well, you
Whereas
know
you
what's
see, you look at minus one, it's like Godzilla is actually scary.
right. Well, when Godzilla minus one, when it came out, just a few weeks, or I guess a month ago now, a couple of months ago, I was reading the comments online. They're like, "Oh my God, for the first time, a Godzilla movie made me cry. A Godzilla movie has human. I care about the human drama. Godzilla's scary." It's like, have you not seen the original Godzilla from 1954? I mean,
No, no, yeah.
yeah,
My
that's the
favorite comment
original.
was, you know what my favorite comment about that was? Like,
Yeah.
Godzilla Minus One was so good, I even tolerated the subtitles.
Oh, that's a good. Yeah.
Oh, so,
I don't
but
know.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It could have used some more Raymond Burr. I don't know. They could have put Raymond Burr in there. That'll be the next re-release, right? They did the black and white version, then we're gonna get the Raymond Burr deepfake
Right.
version of it.
But yeah, I mean, like going back to Way the Dragon again, like,
Yeah,
I just feel sad every time I look at it. I mean, allow me a little shameless plug. I did the
please.
audio commentary with Michael Worth and a great martial artist, cinematographer and actor. We did an audio commentary for the UK label Arrows, Bruce Lee and Golden Harvest box set. They did a box set of all the Bruce Lee films that he made with Golden Harvest. Golden Way of the Dragon was in it. And we did an audio commentary, and we both felt that, yeah, this was really his most accomplished work.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
if you look at the whole picture, no doubt about it.
This version of it's currently out of print, but they did such a beautiful job. You can hear Frank's commentaries on this, and this is just an incredible set. I mean, look how heavy and hefty this thing
They
is.
they actually release separate releases. So even though this box set is now a collector's item, you can still buy the individual releases on Arrow's website. Just note that this was actually, since it's for the UK, it's
Mhm.
region coded for the UK, so it's region B. So you will need an all-region Blu-ray player to play them. But the 4K is region free. So
Mhm. And I'm all about the 4K. They look incredible,
yeah.
remastered. Well, one thing I like before we close out, I am curious, kind of going back to the chronology. So in the United States, when people were discovering these films after the fact or after Bruce Lee's passing, Now I've heard different things. I always thought it was the big boss, or as we got it over here, a Fist of Fury. But it was the Five Fingers of Death, which was sort of the first big box office hit from Hong Kong to be released here.
Correct.
So Five Fingers of Death that kicks off the kung fu craze.
Phrase.
And
Yes.
how long after that do we get the American releases of the Bruce Lee films?
I think about a year maybe, or oh no, I think actually I believe well they're all released after End of the Dragon in the US, right? So End of the Dragon was
All
really
of them.
oh,
Oh,
yeah, so
okay.
End of the Dragon was really the first US Bruce Lee film because they were they were like trying to introduce him, but then it came out and he's already died, and so then all the other his Hong Kong film were then shown afterwards here
Hmm.
in the US. Like I said, every time I see that last scene, the cemetery in Rome, you know, is like we know, I'm quoting in hindsight, we know this was adventure. Became his not only his first and last film as a director, but that's technically the last scene in the Bruce Lee film, because
Hmm.
like I said, Enter the Dragon being directed by Robert Klaus, and of course Bruce never finished Game of Death, and
Yeah.
to be shot at the cemetery of all places, the funny in a little bit trivia here, the End of the Dragon. I mean, sorry, Way of the Dragon, the one that you just saw, it was originally was going to be set in 19th century in San Francisco, because that was like Bruce initially wanted to do a film. This was in the original Bruce film version of his Kung Fu TV series. So
Yes.
that was the original concept, because like well, I couldn't make my dream TV series Kung Fu. I'll do a film version. So
Hmm.
this was initially set in 19th century San Francisco. So that's why again we talk about the spaghetti western, and that's why we saw all these western influences, the spaghetti western, not just spaghetti, but just western film
Yeah.
influences in this film throughout.
Yeah. So, but I guess probably it wasn't feasible with the budget as far as like recreating a 19th century Western town. So they went in a different direction.
Exactly, it was probably too costly to do a period film like this, and
Yeah.
so it was decided that well we're set in modern time, but hey we'll go
Hmm.
to Italy,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah.
Well, I'm just curious too. Are you a fan? So, like, since we're on the topic of it, if you're in the audience, if you have HBO Max, and I think now Netflix just picked it up, there's a wonderful series called Warrior, which I don't know. Are you a fan of Warrior? Have you seen it?
I've seen some of them. This is the one with Daniel, right?
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
yeah. It's sort of like the reimagining of Bruce Lee's original
Right.
concept,
Right.
and yeah.
No, I think it's a fine series. I think the fights are good. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure. I mean, as far as like that hard R-rated HBO content, that's probably not what Bruce Lee would have done for American television back in the day. But it is interesting. I mean, just as far as like the fight choreography, the history of the Chinese Tongs in America facing racism and prejudice, and if you haven't seen it, the way I would pitch it, it's basically it's Peaky Blinders meets Shanghai Noon. Like if I had to compare it to something, I would highly recommend it if you're a martial arts fan.
Yeah. And I just want to, again, once again, I mean, I'm so glad you guys get to watch, Where the Dragon on a big screen. I personally feel it is finest work. I think it's really like a modern spaghetti kung fu western in a style like most, like a Sergio Leone film where blues as this kind of like an Eastern Clint Eastwood,
Yeah.
coming here in town and fighting injustice that had his life hasn't been cut far too short. I think it would have been even more impressive in more films other than just the unfinished Game of Death. I think it would have fulfilled his ultimate vision as both as not just actor but also writer and a director. Yeah, I think this was a great film. I think it's good that people get to see it on a big screen. And I think this film, depending on which version you're showing, I mean, especially if you watch the version on the Arrow set, this film has never looked better.
Well, awesome. Well, Frank, thank you so much for your time. We certainly appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, of course. If you're in the audience, I really hope you enjoyed tonight's film, and I hope this encourages you to go out and watch the rest of Bruce's filmography. He didn't do a whole lot of films, but I think each one of them has something special to offer. So, once again, my name is Ryan Bijan. We'll see you next time.
Bye bye.
Bye.